Hello, I am Aisha.
And Paula, your cultural hybrid mental health therapist.
Here to explore unfiltered and heartfelt conversations on core issues
that affect us as human beings. Get ready for honest, captivating,
and real stories that take you on a journey to navigate your life
in the best possible way.
So grab a seat
and stay with us on this episode of
Do We Have Your Attention? Welcome back to our lovely listeners on another episode of the Do We Have Your Attention podcast. I'm your host, Aisha, and joining me is the always amazing Paula.
Hi.
Hi. Okay. Do you want to know today's topic?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just tell you. Like you don't know already. But today we're talking about why consistency is important. And as exciting as that topic sounds, and I want to dive into it straight away, you already know what we have to do first, which is feelings check-in. So, my dear Paula, how are you feeling today?
I am feeling green. I would say green, calm, but then I'm a very excited person. So I would say calm and excitement, but I don't know what color excitement is. So maybe yellow.
Yeah, I think it'll be yellow.
How about you? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling green. I'm feeling calm, peaceful. But I'm also yellow as well because I like talking about consistency. You know, this is my topic. So I'm excited to talk about consistency.
It's a good topic choice, I must say.
It really is. It truly is. I think it's a good conversation that we're going to have about being consistent. So can we dive right into it with your permission?
Yes, but before you do, I just want to put a disclaimer out there. This is a no judgment zone.
Yeah.
There might be some people who are not, well, I don't want to say failing, but more like struggling with consistency.
Yeah.
There might be some people who are doing it and acing it with consistency. We're going to talk about everything.
Yeah. I thank you for giving that PSA because you're right. You know, I don't want anyone to feel like, we want everyone to feel open to listening to the conversation and not feel bad or feel like they're not doing something. If anything, I want you to just learn something from the episode and be willing to try new things or just continue what you're already doing. That's it. That's it.
Pretty much.
Okay. All right. Let's start with asking Paula, what does consistency mean to you? Or more specifically, do you have a story that you could share with us about like a consistency story?
That's a good question, actually. I've never really thought about what consistency means to me. I just know it is something that's very important.
Okay.
I thrive myself on, how do I put this without sounding, I am a workaholic.
Some of us can attest to that.
And, I'm a recovering workaholic.
I think you're doing better.
But I pride myself. I love I get value from consistency and productivity. So I know that those are things that are super important to me because it's just a way of me complying with my beliefs, my actions, my decisions, the way in which I think about things, the way in which I do things. So, of course, for me, being someone who absolutely does get value and fulfillment in being able to see things through, I would absolutely say that, consistency is something important to me. See the way I'm picking my words because I'm like, if I start talking, I definitely know I'm going to sound like those type A personality, which I know that I definitely am a type A personality. We need to do
What's type A personality?
I don't even know what the encyclopedia definition of it is. I just know if characteristic traits of people like that are rigidity, perfectionism, people whose core value, excellence, obviously is around that line. People who don't like to fail. People who have strong emotional reactions. When things don't go well. But obviously,
Shade.
there's reason why we're having conversation about consistency. I think in my life, there's been a lot of ways in which me sort of seeing things through has led to where I'm at. And I'm thinking of something, a good example. The only thing that's coming to mind right now is one I had with a friend of mine recently where I was talking about a possible opportunity that might be coming, professional opportunity that might be coming, might be happening for me.
Okay.
And how that ties into my former grad school. And I'm like, I met someone who's sort of working within that institution. And I was thinking about working with a psychotherapist or someone in the field of mental health.
Yeah.
And we had spoken about a possible partnership.
Collaboration.
And my friend was like, it seems like this school that you went to, or the decision that you made to go to this school has been working consistently in your favor. And I was like, yeah, you know what? You're actually right. I remembered one of the reasons why I chose to go to this grad school in the first place was because I had done my research and I had seen, now Aisha knows this, my background. I was one of those people who was so bad at school. I don't know how to frame it. I was just bad. Like, them people that have like decorated report cards, A, B, C, D, F, E, D. That was my report
Decorated
card.
is a good way to phrase it.
Being that this was obviously a very top school, one of the top schools in the world, I didn't even know how I got in. To today, I don't know. I think
we know how you got in because you're qualified. As far as I'm concerned,
it's God. So I knew already that being in this environment, like, it wasn't about achieving academic excellence because I was not going to stand out. But for me, it was more about relationships and connections. And knowing that I'm not the most social person, I'm actually very super anxious being around large groups of people, but one-on-one connections, I know how to develop those types of connections. So I invested my time in that school, consistently invested my time in that school by building these relationships. And the more I did that, the more I saw results coming from it, even when I left. Where these relationships that I was being very, very intentional and consistent about, where the relationships that were obviously benefiting me in the run. And it wasn't coming from a place of, this is why I want to, this is how I'm going to do. It was more so, I understand that my long-term goal is to be able to be this and is to be able to do this in the field of mental health. I can't do these things by myself.
Yeah, agreed.
And also the timeline for me to get to that point too as well. I don't know what that timeline is going to be like. I only know that if I'm being consistent about the effort and the time and the relationships I'm building, eventually it's going to yield the results that I hope that it would
positive
yield.
Outcome.
So thinking about this same question too as well, what does consistency mean to you? And what experience comes to mind when you think about that?
Thank you for sharing that, because first of all, I think when we talk consistency, people don't think about relationships. So I'm glad that you gave the example of relationships. I think sometimes people undermine the value in the outcomes of staying consistent with specific relationships. I'm very grateful for you for bringing that example. But when I think about the question, I think consistency to me means showing up for myself in ways that I would be proud of, / would improve my quality of life.
Yeah.
So whether that is relationships, whether that is career, whether that is what I eat, my physical health, my mental health, like showing up for myself in those ways. And I think the example I would make is, Paula knows this, is my sleep. Something very small, but
not small at all.
Very important. It seems small because people that know me know I struggle with sleeping. I do not sleep well at all. Like if I get 5 to 6 hours in a night, that's like a very great night for me. As sad as that sounds, that's a very great night for me. And I don't know, I woke up no, it wasn't January, I can't lie. I think it was closer to the end of 2023, and I said I can't do this anymore, because at that time I was getting like 2 to 4 hours of sleep, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. It's just not working for me. So I decided to create a consistent routine of going to bed at 7:30 p.m. Now, a lot of people would say
7:30.
Yes, 7:30 p.m. As crazy as that sounds, it worked for me. Because I need a certain amount of hours before I actually fall asleep. I'm not like, I'm so jealous of people that can just close their eyes and fall asleep. But that's not me. I need like 3-4 hours before I finally sleep. And then I get my 5 to 6 hours of sleep. And so that little change that I made, trust me, improved my quality of life. It improved my interactions with my clients, my coworkers, my friends, because I would just be honestly irritated, angry, isolating myself because I was just tired all the time. And that's because I wasn't sleeping. And I also had like an intense daily routine. And obviously lack of sleep was not helping. And once I adjusted my sleep pattern, everything just kind of fell into place. So that's like a little example of being consistent with something and being strict with it as well. Like people would try to call me after 7:30 and I'll be like, I'm not picking up. Actually, they can't even reach me after 7:30. No offense. No offense to people. It's not personal. It's just I have to own up to the boundary because this is something that is helping my own quality of life. And it's very necessary for me to function better with these
there
people.
There are many times where I'll text you and I'm like, oh, Aisha, it's just wait till tomorrow.
Yeah, don't worry about it. I'm not going to respond.
She's not going to respond.
In fact, I even started telling my friends, PSA, if you have an emergency, it's not me you should be calling because I would not respond. I genuinely wouldn't. And sometimes, again, because I'm giving myself hours to fall asleep, I see the messages, but I know if I pick up my phone, that's me breaking my cycle. So I just don't, and I put my phone. And I created this routine, again, of reading instead of watching TV before bed because the stimulation of the TV and the screen time and all of that was not really helping me. So when I read a book, I feel more calm, relaxed, excited. And then, it's easier for me to fall asleep. So that's like a little story.
I have a question about that, actually. What do you think entails, how do I put this? What do you think, what goes into you being able to make that change? Like, what are the important things that go into you being able to start from being someone who didn't necessarily have good sleep and I guess the sleep habits, sleep patterns, to becoming someone who started seeing the results of what it means to have good sleep patterns? Like, what are those things that you would say that you did or didn't do or started to think about very differently that sort of led to that?
I think I tried many medical routes. Like, I went to my doctors. They gave me many medications. I changed my sleep routine. I would stop drinking water at a certain time because that was part of the problem. Drinking water too late, because if I wake up to pee, I'll just be awake. And I had all this help, but it wasn't working, I guess because it didn't make sense for the structure I had created for myself. So I really had to think about the structure I created for myself. And that included me starting to look at, okay, you stop drinking water at this time, but you're still awake at 9 p.m. Like, that's not productive at all.
Right.
Again, you take medication at 9 p.m., but the medication needs you to have at least 12 hours of sleep. Can you believe that? It's not 8 hours. So if I'm taking the medication at 9, I would need to wake up way later. But then I have work, so it doesn't make sense for me.
Yeah.
So I think I started to just realize that all of these things that I was trying were not working because of the lifestyle. I wasn't making the right lifestyle changes. When you struggle with sleeping, you kind of just want to fix it. But the reality is those things cannot just be fixed. You have to practice certain things or make certain adjustments for it to work out. So it was a thing of reflecting on what am I doing that's preventing these things from working. And the medications, if I take them at 7:30, it would work, but I just don't like the side effects. So I just stopped.
Right.
I'm like, I could do this naturally without using medication.
Right.
So it's kind of just reflecting on my personal life and being like, yeah, girl, you need adjustments. You can't be on FaceTime at 10 p.m. and then be wondering why you're not sleeping well.
Well, you know something from what you're saying, and thank you for sharing that. And why I asked that question is because I'm sure a lot of listeners would be thinking like, yeah, but how do you start? Like, how do you make it stick?
Yeah.
But you know, something from what you said that was really stuck out for me, besides the practice, something else that you also said was, or rather I didn't say, but is what I got from what you were saying, is there's a lot of thought that was
goes
being
through.
put into your routine,
Yeah.
the things that you need to do, the things that you don't need to do, but really examining and reevaluating your routine.
Accurate.
And I think sometimes we look at things very abstract, like from an abstract point of view, but not actually really applying it to the day-to-day
You're right.
life and how we see things. And we miss that. So I think from what you're saying, a big aspect of this is you can't be abstract with the way in which you're going about building consistency.
Agreed.
You have to really put in thoughts and
be
also
intentional
practice.
about it, right?
And speaking of practice, what do you think, like, can you relate to any experiences where you felt as though, okay, in your personal relationships, professional pursuits, or your journey of self-development, where you saw practice making perfect, besides the sleeping? And now I'm saying more about the actual process of investing in the little things that we do on a day-to-day basis to yield that result.
That's a very good question. I think I'll use the podcast as an example. Yeah.
But you make an excellent point.
But I think this is a good example of practicing getting to perfection, because I think I'm far from perfection, but I think people that know me, I'm vain. I can't even lie. I am vain. I talk a lot. I talk to myself a lot. If we're close, I talk a lot, But I've just been extremely vulnerable. But sometimes I do feel like when it comes to being professional or expressing my professionalism, I struggle with being articulate. And so I've been trying throughout the years, whether it's collaborating with people at work, doing all these outreaches, putting myself out there. My initial reaction is always to shy away from it. For someone that talks a lot, people are always surprised, like, why don't you want to do it? And I'm like, because when it comes to being a professional, I guess it's something I'm still working on to be...
That identity.
Yeah, that my professional identity. But now I've been pushing myself little by little. And I think that's worked for me because I'm getting better at being articulate. And I think when the idea of the podcast came, as great as the idea sounded, this was the biggest issue for me. How will I articulate myself professionally without people thinking I'm not sounding smart enough, or I don't know what I'm saying, or, just judging what I'm saying from a professional standpoint. But I think as we're recording, I'm getting a little bit more confident. And of course, with your support and our behind the scenes support and feedback, it's been very helpful. But I think that's like a little example of just practicing, expressing myself because again, the personal relationships, it's easy to kind of mess up in those situations without feeling bad.
Yes.
But when it's professional, I think most people want to present themselves professionally in a certain way without looking stupid. And I didn't want that for myself. So I'm like, oh God, I'm exposing a certain side to myself that I don't know if people will take very seriously / how they're viewing it. Like, what is their perspective of it? But then I'm like,
so true.
Yeah, I'm like, you know what? I'm not perfect. I just have to try. And the more we record, the more, what's the word I'm looking for?
We're getting accustomed to it.
Yes.
We're getting feedback.
Yes.
We're receiving feedback.
Yes.
We're making changes.
Yes.
We're hearing each other out.
Yes.
We're also open to that feedback.
Exactly. And the more confident we're becoming. But I want to hear your example though.
Something very interesting about what you said, and thank you so much for sharing that. I'm being vulnerable enough to kind of say, like, I'm figuring out my professional identity and my space within that field of work. And because of that, it's taking consistency and practice to be able to get there. Mine is actually the opposite. I have noticed that and I think maybe because my history, and I talk about this a lot, obviously and I attribute this to trauma and undiagnosed ADHD, being someone who was just so bad at everything. It's almost put me in a position where when I finally found something that I was good at, I was like, I'm
holding
going
on
to
to it.
learn this thing in and out. I'm going to be consistent in it and invest in it and just build my confidence within my professional identity. And don't get me wrong, I have a lot of insecure moments where I doubt my decisions. I doubt why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm like, why does this client want me as a therapist? It makes no sense. But I noticed that I don't really struggle with that practice of being comfortable with my professional identity. Also because of consistency, like I said. Having to really invest in that. But where I have seen it be challenging for me is actually in my personal life. And I joke about this a lot in therapy that if it comes to my work and my profession, put me there because I feel competent and I feel this and I'm investing in it. But if it comes to my personal relationships, that's when I see myself struggling with being consistent. It's funny because I was thinking about it. Like I was thinking, what could be an example of something that I really do struggle with? I would say consistency with my thoughts, like the level of intrusive thoughts, negative thoughts that I have compared to like actual healthy, positive, real thoughts. And I say real because that is actually the experience. And I noticed that as a result as well of anxiety and trauma, because we don't really talk about how trauma in itself can actually really, really mess with your psyche. My mind knows how to sort of convince me that my personal relationships are either bad, like, hey, Aisha did not respond to me because I said this thing earlier on, and now I have pissed off Aisha, and now she no longer wants to be my friend.
Oh, God.
I kid you not. Like, it is, what's the word? It's a vulnerable thing to also express that you struggle with irrational thoughts. But I noticed that in my personal relationships, and obviously specifically romantic relationships as well, because consistently over the years, I really, really had to almost build secure friendship relationships. But also had to really work on building healthier mindsets when it came to these relationships. Where even if I would take a step back and I might have some of these thoughts that come into place, I remember my identity within these relationships. I remember the security within this relationship. And the identity and the stability that comes with consistency. Now, in this relationship specifically, it comes from the period of time where we've obviously invested in one another through healthy communication, through supporting one another, through actually going through difficult times where we did not understand each other. So I think to some degree, it's interesting how in one area of your life you can be consistent and in another area of your life you sort of struggle with that. But I'm also picking up on this theme of there are factors that play a role in why consistency can stick and in why it doesn't necessarily stick. And if I'm being very honest, I'm picking up on a theme and I want to get your thoughts on this of like you cannot be nonchalant if you're trying to be consistent. Let's just put it that way. Like you almost have to be assertive about your life, the decisions, that what you want to get out of what it is that you're trying to be consistent at doing, for you to actually be able to engage and maintain that consistency.
Agreed. I totally agree. Like what you said, like you do have to put in the work. It's a lot of hard work staying consistent. I'm not going to lie. It requires a lot of learning and relearning, but for a greater good, right? Because you have a specific goal, you have an idea of what you want this new thing that you're trying to work on to look like. And again, with the example of either sleep or like my professional identity, like I want to be confident. I want to be sleeping well, number one. And two, I want to feel more confident in my professional life. And so I'm going to expose myself, but being intentional about putting myself in spaces where I talk about things that I know. There's reasons why I have clients. There's reasons why people want to collaborate with me. So why can't I just say outside? Like, why can't I be confident about it in all these other spaces? So yeah, I think you're right about that. I think we do have to put in a lot of work. But do you think that's where most people struggle? Or what do you think are challenges people face or that you face personally with putting in the work when you're trying to get to
That's
this
a good
goal of being
question.
consistent? Yeah.
Honestly, I'm going to just say self. I'm reading a book at the moment, funny enough.
What's it called?
Give me 1 second. It's right here.
Okay.
It's called You Are the One You've Been Waiting For.
Uh-oh.
Bringing courageous love to your intimate relationships. And intimate relationships does not mean just romantic.
Yeah.
It means close relationships,
Yeah.
because we learn a lot about ourselves through relational dynamics.
Agreed.
And the book really highlights a lot of just self. What does self really mean?
Yeah.
And how the view and perception that we have of ourselves and identity is rooted in the outside influences, whether environment, people, success, failure. And I think to some degree, why I say self, and I mean like self-esteem, self-value, self-worth is such a big factor in why we struggle. If you're not secure in your identity, in who you are, and we're not saying what you can do, what you can produce, what your degree is, what your degree isn't, but just in who you are as a person, anything can easily sway you in whatever direction.
I agree.
So even with something as little as sleep, that you mentioned, and I don't even think that's little, because quality sleep does a number on your physical and your mental health.
It does. It truly does.
You see how I made a comment saying 7:30.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I have a sibling who goes to bed like 2, 3, 4. I'm not really sure in the morning, but very late at night.
A.M.
And I remember when we would have conversations where she'd be like, wow, you're going to bed at 11. Like,
oh my god.
And then don't get me wrong, like we're all joking. I'm joking as I'm saying 7:30.
Yeah.
So imagine if my opinion of what time you sleep or outside opinions of what time you sleep becomes more important to you than the benefit of actually why 7:30 makes sense
Paula.
for you.
You're preaching.
Of course, you're going to be making decisions in line with what I'm saying.
I'm pleasing
and
others.
I'm not saying that it's because, what Paula is saying makes sense to you or has influence of you. It's because the security in oneself is not as strong enough to understand the information that is being passed across to you that is useful, and the information that is being passed across to you that is not useful. And I think we all struggle with this as human beings, because we want to be loved, we want to be validated, we want to be seen, we want to be reassured. And this book is really talking about how that validation, love, assurance has to be all self.
From you first, right?
Self-validated, self-loved, self-reassurance, for you to be able to kind of create some type of foundation that is strong enough for you to actually follow through with being consistent in your life.
I agree.
So that's sort of my own headspace when I think about what do we struggle with. And I'm thinking about myself when I say that.
I'm so glad you said that, because even when I asked the question and then I was thinking about the example of sleep, that was a struggle, like thinking about other people, like what would they think? Would they stop calling me? Would they now stop reaching out? But then I had to be like, but I'm the one struggling with sleeping. I'm the one that's like, this is affecting my quality of life. This is actually impacting the way I interact with these people. Because then what happens is when I don't sleep well and I have to engage in conversations with people, I'm not present because I am so tired that I don't have the mental and emotional energy to participate in the conversation. So I think you're right. Yourself, honestly, there's a quote, right? You're the only one that could stop yourself from doing anything you want to achieve. And I 100% agree. And I think sometimes social media also plays a role. And I say that in terms of just unrealistic expectations or making you feel bad about the progress that you're making, make you feel like you're not doing enough, that you could always do more. True, but again, you have to trust yourself, right? Like Paula is saying, you have to trust yourself to understand who you are and what works for you. What works for me may not work for Paula. What works for Paula may not work for me, right? Again, we're friends. At this point, we're like sisters, but that doesn't mean that everything would work the same way for us. And that is absolutely okay.
We're like sisters?
Aren't we?
I just went, oh my God.
Wait, don't you? Wait a minute. When people ask our relationship, I say we're like sisters. Oh my God.
Hey, sister.
Somebody get Paula, please.
Moving forward, I'm going to be like, that's my sister.
Somebody get Paula.
I literally just spoke about us wanting validation and reassurance. I'm like, oh my God, Aisha sees me as her sister.
Yes, I do, Paula. Okay.
But on a serious note, though, like you're bringing social media and technology, how have you seen it be helpful for you? How have you seen it sort of hinder your ability to remain consistent?
Girl,
Sister?
I think sometimes social media can be helpful, but I'm a strong believer of, again, knowing yourself to know what would work best for you, because there's so much information and too many people sharing. Again, these things are helpful, but if you're not careful, you would go off the road of being consistent because you're trying so many things at a time, and then if those things don't work out because you're not staying consistent with one thing, you're so stimulated to wanting many things to try that you now give up. And again, it goes back to knowing yourself and identifying little things that you think works best for you. As little as my workout routine. I remember when I first started becoming consistent at the gym, and I would see all these workout routines and I'll be trying and I'll be like, oh my God, they say in 3 months you should see progress. My own 3 months has passed. I don't see anything. But then I realized it's because I wasn't staying consistent to one routine. Because when I open my social media, somebody will say, oh yeah, if you want abs, try this one. Right. I'll not change my routine and try that one. And then again, I'm not staying consistent with that routine. And so there's no progress being made. So I ended up having to being like, I know my body. I know what I'm capable of. I know what would work best for me. I stayed consistent I created my own little routines from what I saw on social media and I stuck to it. And that's when I started seeing results.
Yeah. I love that. And I appreciate you sharing that too as well, because I'm just starting, or rather restarting after maybe 50-something tries for the past 6 years.
That's okay.
Restarting my own consistency around exercise as well. And it's funny because I was telling my mom on the phone today, I was like, Mommy, it's very clear that if you are exercising 2 times in a week, that is going to you're not going to see anything, no results. Because I've been doing between 4 and 5 days in a week. Yeah. And this has just been 2 weeks. And I kid you not that I've seen so much progress in my energy and my strength, in my form. And that's the consistency aspect. So I'm definitely going to take your advice on just figuring out what works for you and not feeling guilty. Yeah. Now I don't feel guilty anymore. Like the only way I can be on the treadmill is by watching Love Island.
You know
Guess what?
That's motivation.
I watch Love Island.
Motivation, anything that can work for you, because cardio is not easy.
Yeah. So Aisha, what practical advice or tools or resources would you suggest for someone who's struggling to stay consistent and wanting to improve their consistency?
What a heavy question.
That's I said it all.
I think I would say, I think it's really important to say, it's okay if you tried and then you just fell off and it didn't work out. It's okay to start all over again. I think a lot of times once people try and they stop, they're like, well, I tried and I gave up and it just didn't work out. It's okay. So like when you were saying that for the 55th time and I was laughing, I'm like, no, but that's for real. Like even if it's the 100th time, the 1000th time, what really matters is you trying again. Yeah. But in trying again, recognizing that you need to know yourself better to be able to stay consistent. Don't be unrealistic with whatever you're trying to be consistent with. Know yourself, know what you're capable of, what you're not capable of, and stick to it. And if you have a little hiccup, I like to call them hiccups, not failures, because that's an opportunity to retry, right? If you have a little hiccup, it's okay. Try again. Don't give up. And I guess the last one thing that I wanted to talk about was stop comparing yourself to others. I will repeat myself. Stop comparing yourself to others.
Absolutely.
You are on your own journey. No one else is like you. You are unique to yourself and nobody can ever be you, even if they tried. Yeah. So stick to what works best for you. I'm talking to you. What about you, Paula? Quickly as we round up.
Those are some really, really good points that you make, and you're absolutely right when you say that. And I think about even that notion of practice makes perfect.
Yeah.
And honestly, I feel like practice builds consistency, builds discipline. It's not perfectionism, it's not excellence.
No.
But guess what? With healthy and effective, consistent habits that we're forming, or even discipline in itself, there's something that it does to one's body and mind that I can't really explain.
Yeah.
When we are so disciplined and we see the effort that we're putting in, it feels good being able to be like,
it's
guess
very
what?
rewarding.
I worked out 5 days in a week.
Yeah.
I was sweating my ass off, but you know what? I'm investing in myself. I'm investing in my health.
Yeah.
And you cannot fail with practice.
You can't.
I don't believe that failure exists if we're being consistent about investing in ourselves.
Yeah.
It's almost when we stop.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that we can't take breaks, because sometimes your mental health requires you to just
take a break.
Reset, take a break. And I'm a very big fan of taking breaks, to taking a step back and just really evaluating, do I need to do things differently? Do I need to maybe take care of myself and then come back to doing this thing?
Agreed.
Because sometimes too, we as human beings, we can be really hard on ourselves.
We can.
But it goes back to what you were saying about honestly understanding who you are, why you are the way you are, how you function, what's helpful for you, what's not helpful for you, how you react to things, how things affect you. And this goes down to sleep, food, information, TV, work, relationships. It's easily sets you up for a life where you are not only consistent, but you're actually benefiting from the things that you're investing in. So I guess we could say, well, to be able to do some of these other things too as well is investing in yourself.
Yes.
Therapy would be an example of that.
Yes.
Reading.
Yeah.
I hate reading. I hate reading. I have a whole library that I haven't even finished one shelf of the books there. But guess what?
It's the effort
even
that
if
counts.
It's 1 page a month or 2 pages a month, I still do it.
I love it.
It's feeling so proud of myself
As
that I've
you
invested
should.
in myself with 2 pages.
Yeah, girl.
But that's part of that thing too as well, where I understand that I don't have all the knowledge.
Yeah.
So I have to go out and seek the knowledge from whether it's wise counsel, whether it's books, whether it's even TV sometimes, or also therapy as well. But for me to be able to really learn myself, I have to put myself in the position to be able to do that too as well.
Wow, that was a great summary. I really enjoyed this conversation.
It's an interesting conversation.
Yes, because it made me realize how much progress we have both made to work on living healthy lifestyles. And I just wanted to say to anyone listening to this episode and you've been trying and putting in effort, whether you stopped or whether you're continuing, give yourself a pat on the back and clap for yourself, because the little efforts and tries that you're putting in, they all matter. They all really matter.
Absolutely. So, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head, and that's why I mentioned it earlier on that this is not a conversation of judging anyone's pace or race at which they are trying to be better at doing life. It's the fact that you're trying to be better at doing life that's already where you need to just be able to praise your own self.
Agreed.
Because life is already hard.
It's not
Why
easy.
should we be hard on ourselves?
It's
please?
not easy. You have to be kind to yourself. Okay.
All right. As we're wrapping up our conversation on consistency
and why it's important,
can you share our social media accounts so people can consistently engage with us and interact with us on the topic of the importance of consistency?
I love that. We are on all social media I'll try again. We are on all social media platforms at DWHYA Podcast. That's Instagram, X, formerly known as Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, Buzzsprout, TikTok. Yeah, that's where you can find us with that handle. We're the only ones, so no excuses. Stay consistently listening to the Do We Have Your Attention
she's
podcast.
She has joined. I appreciate you, Aisha.
I appreciate you, Paula, my sister.
Consistently being my partner in crime.
Oh, this is so sweet.
You have not disowned me yet. And apparently, one thing I've learned today is I'm your sister.
Oh, my God. Please. Yes.
All right. Thank you so much for listening to us.
Thank you. Bye.
Till next time.
Till
Bye.
next time.